Unmute themselves unless they have a question, in which case they can unmute or disable.
Okay, so you hit record already?
Well, I think I did, didn't I?
I don't know.
Yeah, it's recording.
Okay, I think this is probably everybody who's going to be joining us, and that's great. Welcome, everybody. This is a new platform for me, so bear with me, please. And if there is anything that I'm out of range or you don't understand something that I've said, by all means, ask the question, and that would be great. I think there is a way for you to just raise your hand. I will see it on a screen here, so that should be fine. The other thing is you might want to mute from your side just to avoid any other background information, noise that could be happening around your house. I don't know. And other than that, let's get going on this. What I've done is I have made the quilt top so far without any of the applique on it. I wanted you to see the quilt top. I believe you had a picture emailed out to you. Did you? Like, can you nod? So that you were able to see which fabrics that are being used, because the fabrics are not exactly as pictured on the pattern. I have tried to be fairly close to what they are, but I also was limited to the fabrics that we had available here. So anyway, I hope that you really like them. I do myself, but it has just a slightly different appearance. The reason I wanted you to see the quilt top without the applique on it, because once the applique, that'll be in your month 8 kit, along with the last block, of course, all the finishing, the border, the binding. And it'll be up to you if you wish to do the applique. I will have hints certainly by then, but by next month I will have the applique on this quilt top. I just didn't do that straightforward. So I'm going to move just slightly here. So the first month, what we're going to do is this entire half of the top row. Now, there are a few things that I want to, that are general ideas that I have done as far as preparing this quilt. So one of them is that the cutting and also your 1/4 inch seam allowance must be really accurate. It's very important. We are building houses. We want them to be straight, where there's not a leaning tower of Pisa here in this quilt. So that is really important because there's a lot of 90-degree angles. Shar is saying, oh boy. Anyway, that's okay, Shar. So that is quite critical on that. One of the fabrics that we are using is a stripe fabric, and I have chosen on some of the houses to have the stripes running vertical and on some of them running horizontal, just to change it up a little bit. And so I will draw attention to that when it comes to cutting out those particular individual blocks. The other thing I did is, because some of these seams are very, very short. So in other words, like for instance, on the windows, they are pieces you are cutting is only 1.5 inches wide. So consequently, your seam is only 1.5 inches long. I have shortened my stitch length to 2. My machine defaults in a lot of them to 2.5. So shortening your stitch length to 2 will make that seam a little bit more stable. As well, in other areas, we are going to be sewing on the diagonal. And when I sew on the diagonal, I always will have my stitch length at no more than 2. Again, sewing on the diagonal, a shorter stitch length will make that seam more stable. So I wanted to, these are sort of generalities that will be used throughout the whole quilt. The other thing that's very important is to press after every seam. I know that can seem like a hardship and annoying when you're sewing 1.5 inch seam, but it's really important. Again, it's to help preserve the 90-degree angles that we're going to be creating on building our houses. Some of the areas in the houses, such as anywhere where you've got a long area with windows that are in there, these are all individual pieces. And so by pressing after every seam, you want to keep that as straight as possible, okay? You don't want to sort of press it and kind of go off on a little bit of a curve. That will make the house come out a little bit crooked. And when you're matching it to a single piece of fabric, it just makes it a bit more awkward. So any of that all makes sense? Or any questions so far? Okay, that's great. So we'll start off with the pattern for the house, the first house that we're doing. So that's page 3 on your pattern. I hope that you all able to have your pattern handy with you. That's great. Thanks, Sarah. So the pieces that you're cutting out are fairly straightforward. I'm just going to turn to another page in my book here. The fabric was all marked, I believe, in the kits that you've received as to what is the actual house, which is background, which is window, and so forth. I don't know if you've had a chance to look through the fabric in the kit. Otherwise, I'd be happy to tell you which ones are which, but I believe that should be straightforward. If not, please, let me know. If you have some questions, after this class is finished. Yes, Deb.
When I'm looking at mine and it's labeled as window 1 and background, I would find it easier if they put A, B, C, D, then and have that on it, so I know exactly the piece I'm picking up, rather than writing window 1 or roof or.
Okay, but ABC occurs in every house.
Yeah, that's
and
okay.
Block one has 3 houses. So far as I understand, I will double check with Sarah, she's just off to my side, is that they were packaged house 1, house 2, house 3?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree, but I think, and each one is A, B, C down. It doesn't matter the fabrics, just when they're cutting us the amount for A, if they would just put an A on it, it's much easier to follow the pattern and make sure I have the right fabric.
Yeah, even if it's just written next to house 2, the A or the B, because I'm on house 2 right now and I'm trying to figure out which fabric is which. It's hard to pinpoint.
Okay, so, and in house number 1, your background fabric, you were going to be cutting both A, B, and I.
Yeah.
So what you're suggesting is that the kits should be labeled with the letters on the fabric rather than background? And
yes, so fabric A is different than fabric B, is different than fabric I. So if they just put an A on there, a B, and an I, then that's the piece I'm going to pick. Do you understand what I mean?
Yes, I do. So I just
Okay.
want to make sure that you understood that the background is both A, B, and I. It's all 3 of those pieces.
That's fine, but when I get to number 2, I would do it. I assume they will still package it in the little package of house 1 and then house 2 and house 3 together.
Right.
So then as we unpackage our package, we just have to be careful to keep those packages together. I understand what they do, but I can see me getting.
Me too.
Yeah.
Me too.
Okay, well, if you want to write down here, I mean, I have it in front of me, which fabric is and
Okay.
which pieces are cut from that. So the background we already know is A, B, and I.
So what do they look like? Because I just got my kit today.
Okay, your background fabric is this whitish fabric.
The grunge. It looks like grunge, doesn't it?
Looks like grunge. That's A.
Yeah, it's actually Toscana, but yeah,
Okay.
it could look like a grunge sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Toscana, yeah.
Okay, so that is the background fabric, and you're going to cut in pieces A, B, and I from that one.
Okay, so now that piece could have A, B, and I on it.
Okay.
Yep.
Then the roof. The roof is one piece and it's that's C. So it's this darker blue with just a
With a
little bit
sprig
of
on it. Okay,
yeah, like branches on it.
okay,
That's the only thing you're cutting for house number 1 from that fabric.
okay.
Okay, then the house itself, which is the star fabric, is you're cutting D, E, F, G, and H.
Okay,
G and H?
Yep.
Okay, I was already covered.
I'm confused. Can I just ask a question?
Absolutely,
Okay, so A, B, and I are all for house 1.
correct. Every
And
house
that
is going to
was-
have the same initials, Annie.
Okay,
So we're talking,
just I'm just
yeah,
putting a
we're
sticker.
only doing house number 1 at the moment.
Okay, so the A, B, and I that we're talking about belongs on the background fabric?
Yes,
Okay, I'm just gonna put this little sticker there, so I want to make sure I'm putting it at the right spot.
that's fine.
But I didn't pre-cut in case there was changes to the pattern.
No, I actually was hoping nobody would pre-cut because particular it's the stripe fabric that,
Right,
you know, which way we're going to cut the stripes. That's not to say that when you actually, you know, assemble your house and I have, say, the striped fabric in a vertical manner and you would rather have yours in a horizontal. If your fabric will accommodate that, I mean, that's fine. It is your quilt that you're making, so.
okay, so A, B, and I was the first one, and then you were moving on to another, and I just didn't want to lose track. Okay, go ahead.
All
Sorry.
right, the next one I said was C, which is the roof.
Okay.
There's only one piece that's cut from the roof. And that
Yep.
is this darker blue that has like branches with leaves on it.
Okay,
Okay. Then the house fabric is the one, the light blue with all the stars.
yep,
And you're going to cut 5 pieces from that one.
Are we on house 2?
Group 1.
This is still house number 1.
so it's gonna be C, D, E, and F.
No, it's going to D, E, F, G, and H is the house.
Oh, right. D, E, F.
It's the house and the chimney, actually.
Okay,
I didn't hear that. Okay, what did I got this?
This is group 3. I got 3 of them.
Okay, we all
Oh.
with it?
Yes, I
okay,
was.
Yep.
Oh, here's the.
All right, I'll move on if that's okay.
yep,
All right, so J is the sashing, and that's going to come at the end of the block. So that is going to be your light colored one with the navy blue stars on it. That's J.
no, my J is a light with little blue dots.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry, yes. Yes, it is. I've got the wrong sashing.
Okay,
Okay.
I'm thinking the other one is, yes, no, that's correct.
my sashing, it's all white, and it looks like there's
Yeah.
little blue snowflakes on it.
Oh.
Am I looking at the wrong one?
That's house.
No, I'm sorry. For block number 1, the sashing is this light. It's sort of almost a creamy background, and it has a little blue dot to it.
This was.
Okay, yes, that's J.
That is
Okay.
J for house number 1.
Okay, got it.
All righty.
Papers.
K is the window, so it's a small piece of gold. And it's
Yep.
similar to the roof fabric, except it's gold, but it has the little branches with leaves on it.
Yep, got it.
And that covers that entire first house.
Yeah.
Okay,
thank
all
you.
righty. So the other thing that I wanted to point out with regard to pressing on any of these blocks, what I have done is when any of the doors or the windows, I have pressed the fabric away from all of them. The reason I've done that is not just color, but often it would be we press to the darker fabric. But I like when you're making a house that when you look at a house visually, you'll see the windows and the doors are slightly recessed. So by pressing all the seams around a window or around a door away from the fabric, it makes it the furthest back because, you know, our seams are pressed to one side.
Yeah.
This one's
That's an
windows.
ideal time too, or when it comes to quilting, that for stitching in the ditch around the door or around a window.
Okay.
Okay, does that make sense why I've approached it that way? Okay.
Yeah.
For the third window.
So with assembling house number 1, I think you'll be,
Oh dear.
the instructions are very good, but there's a couple things I wanted to point out, and all of it is related to the roof and the chimney. So I've got this in miniature. I'm hoping you can see that there. So this is the 2 pieces of background fabric. These are my 2 A pieces. And here is the H, okay? So it's going to have you stitch those 3 pieces together so it looks just like that, okay?
Mhm. Yeah.
Now, when you have your roof piece, and I just stabbed myself with a pin, sorry. So to create the roof, what you're first cutting is your C piece is 1 larger rectangle. All right, and then you're going to have your B piece, which is background. And what they're going to tell you to do is to draw a line from corner to corner, and you're going to stitch that on there. And then when that's folded back, that's what you're going to give you the peak of the roof. Okay, now this is a miniature one, so I probably won't do this in the long run, but what I generally do is when I have a situation like this, and it's going to be a number of times through all of these houses where we're making peaked roofs. So I draw a second line a 1/2 inch away from that. And I also stitch that. I don't know if you can see it here. I'm going to put it nice and close to there. I have stitched 2 lines. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So what I do then afterwards, before I trim anything, I will press this over because I want to make sure I still have this nice 90-degree corner here, okay? And by pressing it before you trim off this excess, it's much more stable. This is not going to stretch. If you were to trim this and then press it, particularly if you're going to use steam, it's much easier to get a little bit of a wow into that seam, okay? So if you press it before you trim it, you'll be fine, okay? Now with the second line of stitching here, when you trim it, you're going to trim a 1/4 inch away from both seams, really. You're going to trim right down the middle. And what happens with that is that you get a 1/2 square triangle out of what they are telling you to toss. So from making the roof on here, I have these 2 1/2 square triangles. One has the little bit of the chimney on it, and the other one is just a straight regular 1/2 square triangle, which I have trimmed down to 2.5 inches. So these are bonus pieces, as I would call them. And if you have a book like what Edita Satar's, this is from a number of years ago, called Friendship Triangles, there are lots of patterns in there with various triangle pieces and so forth like that. But they're handy anyway. I don't know yet what I'm going to do with these other triangles. For our 8 months are out, I'm sure I will come up with something, and then I'll show you. But that's what I've done rather than tossing them. And the other thing is it's much easier to sew them right away as opposed to trimming them off, setting them aside and say, well, I'll sew it later. It takes but a brief moment to sew that extra little short seam. Okay, I don't know if you've ever done that before, but I regularly do that with that. Okay, we good so far? So when you are doing, you want to get this chimney piece. So the trick is here as to which way to line this up when you're putting it on. You're going to line it up like that. So you can see that the chimney piece here the lines are running this way, okay, from the pieces that I have sewn together. And I have my diagonal line from corner to corner here. And I have my second line drawn. I'll put it a little closer to the screen. Hopefully that shows up. You can see that second line is drawn a 1/2 inch away. So that's my 2 1/4 inch seam allowances. This one's miniature, so I'm not going to save this tiny little 1/2 square triangle. I save a lot of things, but this is my limit. I definitely don't do that. Okay, so once you have stitched that, again, I would press this up. And before you trim it, it's probably a good idea to press it anyway. Then you'll be able to make sure that your chimney is oriented in the manner that it's supposed to be. Okay, that's another advantage of pressing it before you actually trim it. Because if you've trimmed it and it's turned the other way, it's like, uh-oh. Okay, is that clear? Any questions? Oh, great. Okay, so then when you're joining the house, you've got your main part of the house, which this is your D piece. Your little window is in there between your E and your F, and the G is on the other side, okay? And when you join it all together, that's what your house is going to look like. And then you have your straight piece of background that just goes on the top. All right, clear like mud? Okay. That was one of the trickier parts about that particular house. And so that's why I wanted to let you know about all that. Okay, so, and so you're stashing onto the right side of your house, and then you'll start building, you know, that row of block 1. Okay, so I'll move on to house number 2. So that's on page 4. Okay, so on this particular house, you're going to create an hourglass block that is featured in the house there. Okay, but I'll run through which pieces are cut from which fabric first. So your background, you're only cutting 1 piece, and that is A. No, sorry, yeah, that's A. Okay, your B piece is also sashing, and it'll be the same fabric as you had with house number 1. So that's that sort of creamy colored with a little blue dot on it. Does this go on the color block?
That's 3. I only have this one.
Could you repeat that, please? My pen ran out of ink. I had to get another one.
This is 2.
Yeah, no problem. So the background is piece number A. There's only 1 piece. Then B is your sashing, and it's the same fabric, that light creamy color with the blue dot, same as with house number 1.
Different job.
Okay.
That's not
Now,
same.
right, so now the roof fabric, I have used that in 2 places. That is part of the hourglass. So I have cut E from that and also C. So the same fabric is used in 2 places on the house. Here's my miniature one. I've used it here on the hourglass and also for the roof.
Okay.
Okay, that fabric there.
Roof. Okay.
Is that the fabric with the tiny little squares on it?
No, that's a stripe fabric.
Mhm.
So it looks like a vine with leaves, and it has beige
yes.
in it. Can you
Yeah.
see that there?
Yeah, thank you. That's
Okay.
Let's see. What other letter?
C and E, was it?
That was C and E, yes.
Okay.
Now D is the other part of your hourglass block, and it is the same, it's similar to the fabric we used in house one, but a slightly lighter shade, again with the little branches and leaves.
Was that D? Sorry.
That is D, yes.
Okay. Mhm.
And I'm going to come back to the cutting on that. The house itself, which is the striped fabric that has little squares in it,
Mhm.
that is F, G, H, I, and J. So again, there's 5 pieces. And I want you to carefully note that I have cut all of these with the stripe running on the vertical, not horizontal. So it's running up and down. So for instance, when you're going to cut piece number F, which is this piece right over top of the hourglass block, the stripes need to be running that way. Okay. The other, my miniature one doesn't have the window, so you have to be careful when you're cutting these so that all of your lines are all running up and down. Okay, so where these pieces here, where this one under by the above and below the windows, they're only cut 1.5 inches wide. So make sure that the stripes are running down, that the stripes are not running across your 1.5, that they're running on the length of it. Excuse me. Okay. And then the windows is that little gold fabric, and that is K.
Yeah. But I don't. What do you use for B? Light fabric for sash. I don't have anything about for sashing for house 2, do you? Sashing.
The sashing would be the same fabric as for in house number 1. You may have it all as one piece of fabric, just wider rather than, but you'll still be able to get both sashings out of that same fabric, okay? Yeah, it was just easier for the store to prepare the kits without cutting 2 pieces, okay? So, but you do have the fabric. Now, the one thing that I wanted you to note when you are cutting E and D, they're starting, because you're ending up with 2 triangles, you are starting off with a square, and it does tell you to cut them on the diagonal twice. What I chose to do is that I just cut it on the diagonal once, took 1 triangle away, and then the other triangle I cut again on the diagonal to get the 2 smaller triangles that I needed to make my hourglass block. Okay, does that make sense? So from those 2 fabrics, from my miniature one, so I have these two larger triangles, because this started off as a square. I mean, not these 2, but that was the size of my square. I cut it once on the diagonal. I took 1 piece and then I cut the other triangle again in this manner to get my 2 small ones to make my hourglass block.
Gloria?
So the 2 triangles that you're not going, oh, sorry, yes?
Yeah, isn't there another triangle block down further in the thing? Like, I was watching the one from Laundry Basket and she just used the other half of it the other way around down below.
Yes, that is correct. And I did use one of those fabrics, but I didn't use the other one.
Okay.
Again, that was my choice. But yes, there is the same thing later on in another house where we are going to create this hourglass block as part of the house.
Can I ask one more question, Gloria, while I have you?
Yes.
If you chose to make your windows white rather than the yellow, which one would you use? The sashing or background or what? Like if you didn't want yellow windows, which white would you use?
I mean, of the fabrics that you have?
You can think about that and get back to me.
Okay, I think you could use whichever you'd like. I'm not certain that you will have enough fabric in your
Okay.
kit though for that.
Okay, Thank
So if you wanted to substitute something from your own fabrics at home, sure, that'd be
Or-
fine.
or pick up a fat quarter at the store. Yeah,
Yes,
okay.
oh yeah, no, if you did, you know, that's
Thank
fine.
you.
Okay, you're welcome. Okay, I had no other specific notes when I was sewing up this house, but this is one where I talked about it's really important to press after every seam because of here. This area here is made up of 3 different pieces. And when they're sewn together, they have to be the same as the little piece in between on either side. So you're sewing these 3, which is why your seam allowance being 1/4 inch is very important. I will admit something here that in some of the houses where there were multiple pieces that were sewn together and then I had to add them to a single piece of fabric, where all my multiple pieces were just slightly longer. And that may happen to you as well. That's not a problem to trim it, but I would not trim it. The one thing you really need to keep in mind is that when you have 2 windows that are side by side, they need to be lined up. You don't want one window to be just slightly lower than the one beside it in the same house. Okay, that's, I'd have a word with your contractor if he did that to you. So, okay, does that make sense? But if, for instance, when I had a situation, and this was further on where there was additional pieces, not just 3, where I had 5 going down and I had to match that up. I made sure my windows were all lined up and any excess was at the bottom. And then I just trimmed it straight there. And I mean, that's fine. And if I didn't tell you, you wouldn't know that. But I just want you to be aware of what can happen. If it happens to me, I'm sure it'll happen to somebody else. Okay, but the main thing is when your house is all finished, it still looks all lined up. No, Shar, I wasn't thinking of you. So the extra triangle, I would save this for later on because one of them I did use later on, but later on you will get another piece of fabric with a square that you can, you know, will use for that other hourglass block too. So, but you can use it for something else even, and I might end up combining it with my little half square triangles. I don't know. Okay, is that that clear? So you're going to end up with a nice little house like this, except that my miniature one doesn't have windows. It was too tiny to do that. Okay, so then we'll move on to house number 3. That's page number 5 in your pattern. And I'll go through that too. So your roof piece is this same blue with the little, so this is what you're going to cut A from. So it's that blue with a little leaf or little branches on it. Okay. The house itself is this fabric that has other leaves and it has a little bit of gold in there as well. You're going to be cutting B, C, D, E, and F, which is the chimney. Those 5 pieces are coming from that one fabric. Okay. The windows and the door, so is sort of this light fabric with a little blue. So that's H and I. J and K are your background, so that's, stop me if I'm going too fast. But the background are just on either side of your chimney piece.
Okay. What's this one? Like gold for.
Okay,
I don't have a like.
can you see? And then the last piece you're going to have is the sashing that I talked about, and that is that white with the navy blue stars on it. Okay.
Oh, okay. It's G. What about this? What's this? Oh, this is the background. Okay.
Okay, Carla, you're okay with that?
The
Yes,
blue
Susan?
the blue fabric for the house is the same as the chimney?
Yes,
Okay,
I've done that in almost all the, I think I've done it pretty much in all the houses.
okay,
If you wish to change it up with something else, you know, you're absolutely free to do that. I found it easier with kitting and that when, you know, you've got a chimney piece that you're, you know, you're cutting a 1.5 inch square out of it. It was easier just to use the same house fabric.
yep.
When I did do the chimney, I tried to get some of the print. So I've actually got the leaves kind of going up. So, I mean, I'm just imagining the smoke going up the chimney. So the leaves are going up the chimney too. Okay. But I wouldn't lose sleep over that particular one.
Okay, I gotta get to work, everybody. Bye.
Bye, Susan. So this is the one house where I'm almost certain that once I had sewed, if you look at the part here where you've got, this is your D piece, here's a window, another D piece and a window, and this.
A color window.
Got 5 pieces that you're sewing all in one row, and then it had to match up with here. So I know that mine did end up being just a little bit longer. So I made sure whatever was too long
Yeah,
was
well,
at
I'm
the bottom, and that's where I would have trimmed it off. I was more concerned about
And
keeping
when
the
I'm
windows lined up side by side. And this
missing the
window is lined up with the top of the door.
sticker.
Okay, so visually, that is what you're going to really notice, is that
Right, elbow.
be all lined up there. And other than that, it is straight sewing. I have no other hints on making house number 3 and then the sashing. So on the last page of your pattern, it shows you just going to sew all of your 3 houses together, and that's going to comprise block number 1. I'm kind of standing in front. Maybe I should move here so you can see all of block number 1. Maybe that's better. I've been hiding it. So, okay, any questions from anybody?
No, perfect.
All righty. Well, you will get an email tomorrow with a link that this has been recorded so that you'll be able to watch it again. And if you have any questions that aren't, you know, come up as you're actually making this, you can contact me through the store, or some of you, you know where I live. So, and that's fine too. So, okay.
Thanks, Gloria.
All right, thank you. It's wonderful to see all of you. Nice to be back to teaching. And we'll see you all next month.
Thanks, Gloria.
Okay, bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay, pause, stop.